Chapter 1, Ministry of Health, 1980. Director Elinor Peterson looked at the young woman before her, her expression serious. Comrade Foster, firstly, congratulations on your successful application for the African Aid Mission. Welcome to our medical team. However, the environment in Africa is harsh and the conditions are extremely challenging. There's a possibility you might never return. Are you truly certain about this? Vivian Foster nodded. I am certain. A look of admiration glinted in Director Peterson's eyes. Our team will depart in 1 month. Use this time to prepare thoroughly. Vivian nodded, slung her canvas bag over her shoulder, and turned to leave. Just as she stepped out of the Ministry of Health, she spotted 2 familiar figures ahead. The man, dressed in a suit, stood tall and straight as a pine tree. It was the man she had loved for 5 years, her guardian, Lucas Thornton. And the woman beside him, in a green floral dress, was Lucas Thornton's fiancée, Willow Myers. The woman said something, and Lucas turned his head to look at her, a gentle expression on his face that made Vivian's heart flutter for a moment. How long had it been since she'd seen such a tender look on his face? Her mother had died in childbirth when she was born, and before she turned 6, her father had also passed away in an accident. Her relatives, disdaining her for being a girl, had shirked responsibility, none willing to take her in. It was Lucas Thornton, then a promising young officer, who had taken the initiative to bring her to the military housing compound. He had knelt, looking at her gently. Don't be afraid, I'll take care of you from now on. Because Vivian's father had once saved his life, he doted on her exceptionally. She was always the first among the children to get the new candies and toys from the commissary. Every new year, he would hire a tailor to come to their home and make her many new clothes. And before she moved into the compound, he had even had the house redecorated. He, who was never extravagant, had even gone to the trouble of hiring 2 housekeepers to look after her. Everyone in the compound envied Lucas Thornton's affection for her, saying he wasn't just raising a girl, but cherishing a little princess. The man would let her sit on his shoulders, his tone doting, "My little girl deserves the best." Living in such close proximity, the young girl's heart began to flutter, and she gradually fell in love with him, confessing her feelings on her 20th birthday, emboldened by alcohol. That night became the turning point in her relationship with Lucas Thornton. For the first time, Lucas had flared up at her, his gaze cold and sharp. Vivian Foster, there's a 12-year age gap between us. It's impossible. Besides, I've raised you since you were a child. I'm your elder, meant to see you married off one day. How could you have feelings for me? The young woman's face was youthful yet stubborn. What does a 12-year difference matter? What does it matter that you raised me? I don't care. If you take just 1 step towards me, I can bear all the gossip and slander. Hearing this, Lucas Thornton grew even angrier. Vivian Foster, you're being utterly absurd. You can't bear these consequences. With that, ignoring her pleas, he gathered all the secret diaries and portraits she had made for him over the years and burned them all. Afterward, to avoid her, he left early and returned late every day. A week later, he brought Willow Myers home, telling Vivian that Willow was the woman he loved. A month after that, they were engaged, and he gradually grew distant from Vivian. Watching them being coaxed into a kiss at their engagement party, she finally understood what he meant by impossible. At that moment, she finally let go of her love for him and submitted her application for the African Medical Aid Mission, and today, her application had been approved. She would soon be leaving him. Perhaps sensing her gaze, Willow Myers turned around. Seeing Vivian, she exclaimed in surprise, "Vivian, what are you doing here?" Lucas Thornton, following Willow's gaze, turned as well. His previously gentle face instantly darkened. "Are you following us?" Vivian's hand tightened. Ever since her confession, she was no longer the innocent little girl in his eyes. Everything she did, in his view, was calculated. She looked up at the man before her. "Uncle Lucas, you've misunderstood. I was just passing by, I had some business here." But the man didn't believe her at all. "What business could you possibly have here?" Vivian fell silent. She couldn't tell him she was going to Africa. The conditions there were harsh, a near certain death sentence. He had been entrusted with her care, he would never allow her to go. The atmosphere between them grew tense. Willow Myers quickly stepped forward to smooth things over. "All right, Lucas, don't be so harsh with the little girl. Since we've run into each other, Vivian, why don't you join us?" Vivian shook her head. "No, thank you, I have other things to do, I wouldn't want to disturb your date." With that, she didn't look at his expression again and turned to leave without hesitation. Watching her retreating figure, Lucas Thornton's eyes gradually darkened. He wondered if it was his imagination, but he felt she was somehow different from before. Chapter 2. As soon as Vivian Foster returned home, the housekeeper, Mrs. Gable, came to greet her. "Miss Vivian, what dishes should I prepare for lunch today?" Vivian paused. In the past, Lucas Thornton had always indulged her palate, and the food was usually spicy. But now, she understood her place. Lucas Thornton and Willow Myers were the masters of this house. She was merely a guest. The dishes should suit his taste. So, she asked Mrs. Gable to prepare some milder dishes. Mrs. Gable nodded, then suddenly seemed to remember something. "By the way, Miss Vivian, Mr. Thornton hasn't had much of an appetite lately. Perhaps you could make some sour plum tarts to whet his appetite." Hearing Mrs. Gable's suggestion, she suddenly recalled a time long ago when Lucas Thornton, severely injured, had suffered a high fever through the night and couldn't even manage liquid food. She had been frantic. To get him to eat something, she, who had been pampered all her life and never cooked, spent 3 days making a batch of sour plum tarts. They hadn't looked appealing, and the taste was mediocre, but he had eaten them with relish and even praised her. From then on, sour plum tarts became a frequent item on their table, until he got together with Willow Myers, and the sour plum tarts disappeared. Thinking that she wouldn't have another chance to make them for him once she left for Africa, Vivian Foster made a large batch of sour plum tarts, put most of them in the refrigerator, and placed one plate on the table. Just then, the front door opened, and Lucas Thornton strode in. Seeing the sour plum tarts on the table, the man's cold words pierced her ears. "And you still say you weren't following us?" She looked at him, bewildered, as he pulled a small box of sour plum tarts from his bag. "Willow just bought me these, and then you go home and make a batch. If this isn't stalking, what is?" Vivian Foster opened her mouth, about to explain, but he had already thrown the tarts from the table into the trash can. Then, he walked past her into his room, warning her just before closing the door, "Instead of wasting your energy following me, you'd be better off minding your own business." For the next few days, perhaps to avoid her tracking, Lucas Thornton always left very early and returned very late. One day, Lucas Thornton was up early as usual. As he descended the stairs, Vivian Foster caught up with him from behind. "Uncle Lucas, you don't have to avoid me anymore. I won't pester you. I'll stay in my room and won't cause you any trouble." He frowned, about to speak, but the young woman had already turned and returned to her room. True to her word, he didn't see Vivian Foster for the next few days. Whenever he returned late at night, her familiar figure was no longer waiting at the door. For a moment, he felt strangely unaccustomed to it. One day, Lucas Thornton, not having seen her again, asked the housekeeper, Mrs. Gable, "Where is Miss Vivian?" Mrs. Gable was stunned for a moment, then quickly replied, "Miss Vivian has been staying in her room for the past few days. She hasn't come out much." Lucas Thornton looked at her closed door, hesitated for a moment, then walked over and knocked. He knocked for a while, but there was no response from inside. Finally, he turned the handle and walked in. He immediately saw the young woman slumped over her desk, fast asleep. He looked at her, then picked up a nearby blanket, walked over, bent down, and gently draped it over her. As he was about to straighten up, his gaze fell upon the desk and was immediately drawn to the books on it. The next moment, the man's large hand reached around her arm and pulled out a book. The movement startled the soundly sleeping young woman. Rubbing her eyes, she greeted the person before her. "Uncle Lucas." As soon as she spoke, she saw him holding a medical textbook, his handsome face etched with anger, making her instinctively hold her breath. "What are you doing reading these books? Are you thinking of working in a hospital again?" Chapter 3. Seeing the coldness in his eyes, she remained silent. When she was a child, people in the military compound would ask her what she wanted to be when she grew up. She would point to a picture in the newspaper and say she wanted to be a doctor, saving lives. But Lucas Thornton had quickly covered her mouth, saying that was not allowed. He had seen too many gruesome scenes in hospitals. She had been pampered since childhood. What if she couldn't handle it? Besides, with him around, she didn't need to endure such hardships. Later, when she grew up, she never forgot her dream of becoming a doctor. When the man found out, he cajoled her for a long time. eventually compromising by saying she could get a medical certification to satisfy her whim. But becoming a doctor, joining a medical team, was absolutely out of the question. He fought his way up, ready to risk his life, but the little girl he cherished could not suffer the slightest harm. Now, seeing her reading medical books again, the man was naturally displeased. Lucas Thornton then remembered that Willow Myers had recently started working at a hospital again, and he had to pick her up and drop her off every day. He continued, "Did you see Willow join the hospital, so you want to copy her to attract my attention?" Seeing her lower her eyes without a word, Lucas Thornton took it as a sign of guilt, his tone growing heavier. "Vivian Foster, I've told you, no matter what you do, I will not fall in love with you. I'll say it again. Get rid of those improper thoughts." With that, he took her medical books and stormed out, slamming the door. Staring at the empty desk, a pang of bitterness welled up in Vivian Foster's heart. Ever since her confession was rejected, no matter what she did, in his eyes, it was a ploy to get his attention. But now, she had long since given up her love for him. She felt upset for a long while before composing herself and looking at the desk calendar. She picked up a fountain pen and circled a number. 3 more days until Lucas Thornton's birthday. Thinking that this would be the last birthday she'd spend with him, and that she might never return from Africa, she decided to take this opportunity to repay all his kindness over the years. She pulled open a drawer and took out a small notebook. From the day Lucas Thornton had adopted her, she had secretly kept accounts. She had recorded every cent he had spent on her. Vivian Foster calculated Lucas Thornton's expenses on her over the years, then took out a cloth bundle from under her pillow. Inside was the money she had saved over the years. She spread all the money on the table and counted it, finding it was still far short. She frowned, thought for a long time, and finally took out a tin box from her bedside table. Inside were all the family heirlooms her parents had left her. The next morning, before the mist had cleared, Vivian Foster secretly left the house with the tin box, only returning at dusk. After closing her room door tightly, she put the money she got from selling the heirlooms and her previous savings into an envelope. Finally, she placed the money and a farewell letter into the bottom compartment of a music box. She examined it repeatedly, making sure it wasn't noticeable, before placing the music box on her desk. On his birthday, many guests came to the house. It wasn't until the banquet was about to begin that Vivian Foster walked over to Lucas Thornton and handed him the music box. "Uncle Lucas, happy birthday." The man looked at the gift but didn't reach out to take it. Just then, Willow Myers beside him exclaimed in delight, "Wow, this music box is so beautiful. I've been wanting to buy one for ages but couldn't find it." Hearing this, Lucas Thornton immediately took the music box from Vivian's hand and gave it to the woman beside him. Vivian instinctively started to protest, but the man's gaze, like icy shards from a snow-capped mountain, pierced her with a bone-chilling cold. "Since you've already given the music box to me, I can give it to whomever I please. Besides, Willow and I are getting married soon. My things are naturally hers too." Vivian Foster's outstretched hand dropped. True, they were getting married. What difference did it make who had it? Soon, the banquet began. Lucas Thornton looked tenderly at Willow Myers beside him and extended his hand. The woman smiled shyly and took it. Together, they walked onto the stage and announced their wedding date. Amidst the applause and blessings of the crowd, their eyes met, and then his hand naturally rested on her waist, as if it were his exclusive domain. This made the onlookers envious, murmuring about how well matched they were. Standing in a corner, Vivian also nodded in agreement. Yes, they are indeed very well matched. As the day of her departure for Africa drew nearer, Vivian Foster prepared to say goodbye to her friends. She didn't have many friends. The few she had were met while studying for her medical certification, and all of them now worked in hospitals. She went to the hospital alone with gifts and gave them out one by one. At the other end of the hospital, a familiar face appeared outside the director's office. Willow Myers stood outside the door, holding her resignation letter, her mind filled with a myriad of thoughts as she looked at the familiar nameplate on the door. She had only been to the director's office twice. The last time was when she had just joined and was completing her onboarding procedures. Because of her parents, it had been much easier for her to obtain a doctor's position than for others, which led her colleagues to be prejudiced against her. Although she later proved her medical skills through her abilities, those people still assigned her the most tiring and arduous tasks. She had no choice but to accept it silently. But now, she was about to marry Lucas Thornton, which meant she would soon be Mrs. Thornton. Since she was going to be an officer's wife, why should she stay in the hospital and suffer? Thinking this, she straightened her back, knocked on the door, and without waiting for a reply, pushed it open and walked in. She placed the resignation letter on Director Harrison's desk. "Director Harrison, I want to resign." After reading Willow Myers's resignation letter, Director Harrison frowned, his eyes full of disapproval. "Comrade Myers, you should know that our hospital has always been short-staffed. You got in by taking someone else's spot thanks to your parents' connections. Leaving at this time is extremely irresponsible. Unless you're seriously injured and can no longer hold a scalpel, this is just a pipe dream." But Willow Myers didn't care about any of this, merely insisting on resigning. Director Harrison pushed the resignation letter back, closed his eyes, his meaning clear. She did not take the resignation letter back. "Whether you agree or not, I am resigning." Chapter 4. After speaking, she didn't bother to see Director Harrison's reaction and turned to leave. As she reached the stairwell, she collided head-on with Vivian Foster. Looking at the young woman opposite her, she inexplicably recalled the way Lucas Thornton looked at Vivian. That kind of gaze was not one reserved for a junior. This made her feel a sense of crisis, but she had no evidence to drive Vivian Foster away. Then, Director Harrison's words, "Unless you're seriously injured and can no longer hold a scalpel," came to mind, and an idea gradually formed. "Vivian, why did you come to the hospital alone? Are you sick? Why didn't your Uncle Lucas come with you?" Vivian Foster opened her mouth, about to speak, when the person before her seemed to remember something and complained, "It's my fault for not feeling well these past few days. Your Uncle Lucas insisted on staying by my side. I couldn't shoo him away no matter how I tried." Her words were filled with a silent boast, and Vivian Foster's heart tightened slightly. If it were before, she would have been very sad. But now, she was going to Africa. How well he treated Willow Myers had nothing to do with her anymore. However, out of basic courtesy, she still asked with concern, "Are you feeling better now?" Willow Myers nodded, covering her mouth with a smile. "Thanks to your Uncle Lucas's attentive care, I'm much better now. By the way, your Uncle Lucas is coming to pick me up from work soon, so I won't chat with you any longer." Vivian Foster nodded, and after saying goodbye, was about to continue on her way. In that instant, a cry of alarm came from behind her. She turned around in surprise and saw Willow Myers tumbling down the stairs. Before she could react, a figure in green rushed over. Willow Lucas Thornton quickly scooped her up, about to head to the clinic, but the woman in his arms tremblingly reached out, tugged at his sleeve, tears welling in her eyes. "Lucas, don't blame Vivian. I fell down by accident." At these words, both Lucas and Vivian froze. Vivian Foster looked at her in disbelief. In her memory, Willow Myers had always presented herself as gentle and magnanimous. She had never imagined Willow Myers would frame her like this. But what chilled her even more was Lucas Thornton's gaze. His eyes were cold and merciless, like a gleaming, sharp blade, seeming to want to dismember her piece by piece, sending a chill through her heart and making it difficult to breathe. What did he mean? Didn't he believe her? But she clearly hadn't pushed Willow Myers just as she was about to speak. The man, holding the woman in his arms, hurried away. The rain poured down. Vivian Foster walked home in a daze, her mind replaying Lucas Thornton's look. After returning home, Mrs. Gable anxiously found her a change of clothes, urging her to take a hot shower quickly. But she shook her head numbly, sitting blankly on the sofa. The hour hand on the wall clock ticked round and round. Suddenly, the sound of a car horn came from outside, followed by the man's footsteps. The thump-thump of footsteps, distant at first, then drawing nearer, clearer, pounded on her heart, one beat after another. Her hands, resting on her knees, involuntarily intertwined, clenching tighter and tighter. The moment the front door was pushed open, she shot up, looking at the person in the entryway. "Uncle Lucas, I?" Lucas Thornton stared at her, his gaze as cold as ice. "Are you satisfied now? Willow's hand is severely injured. She can no longer be a doctor." His gaze then shifted to disappointment. "I told you I don't like you. Why did you have to hurt her?" Now go to the hospital and apologize to Willow. Vivian Foster's hands, hanging by her sides, gradually clenched, her nails digging deep into her flesh. She felt no pain, only shook her head. I didn't push her. Why should I apologize to her? The man laughed in anger, his sharp eyebrows arching coldly. You didn't push her. Did she intentionally throw herself down the stairs then? How can you lie? Vivian Foster, is this how you were raised? Seeing the girl's stubbornness, the man pinched the bridge of his nose and gave her an ultimatum. Either apologize or go to the confinement room. Choose one. The confinement room? Hearing those words, Vivian Foster abruptly looked up in an instant. A torrent of complex emotions, grievance, sadness, helplessness surged towards her. A mist involuntarily clouded her eyes. She remembered after her father died, she, a little girl, was alone and helpless, often bullied by the mischievous children in the military compound. Once, they had locked her in the confinement room for fun, for 3 whole days. She developed claustrophobia because of it and eventually fainted. When Lucas Thornton received the call about her disappearance, he had rushed back overnight from out of town, rescued her, and held her tightly in his arms. His voice had been full of fear and trembling. I'm sorry, Vivian. Uncle Lucas will never let you suffer like this again. Now, for Willow Myers, he wanted to lock her up again. Seeing the girl bite her lip, her whole body trembling, his heart tightened. But thinking of Willow Myers lying in the hospital bed, full of despair, he forcibly suppressed this sliver of reluctance. He beckoned to Thornton's guards. Lock her in the confinement room. Let her out when she realizes her mistake. Yes, sir, with a bang. The door of the confinement room slammed shut, and with it, the light from the window outside. In the pitch-black room, Vivian Foster curled up in a corner, hugging her knees, her body trembling uncontrollably. Gradually, her heart beat faster and faster, her breathing becoming rapid. Her vision grew increasingly blurry, as if she were seeing those mischievous children from years ago. They stood at the door, laughing wantonly, throwing stones at her. Unwanted brat, unwanted brat, unwanted brat. She screamed and struggled, saying she wasn't unwanted, but those children wouldn't listen. Finally, with a bang, they slammed the door shut, their laughter fading into the distance. Vivian Foster scrambled up from the floor, as if a demon were chasing her from behind. She pounded desperately on the door, her voice gradually tinged with sobs. Uncle Lucas, please let me out. I'm scared. I didn't push her, I really didn't. Please believe me. Her miserable cries seeped through the thick door panel, but there was no one outside. Weak from crying, she slumped against the door, sinking to her knees, her breathing growing shallower and shallower. Finally, with a thud, she collapsed to the floor. In a daze, she vaguely saw a familiar figure rushing towards her anxiously. Chapter 5 In a daze, she felt someone holding her tightly, constantly calling her name. Vivian, Vivian, don't sleep. That anxious voice sounded so much like Lucas Thornton. But wasn't he at the hospital with Willow Myers? And he despised her so much, how could he possibly come to save her? Tears of grievance streamed relentlessly from the corners of her eyes. Uncle Lucas! A rough yet warm hand gently wiped away her tears. SHH, my girl, I'm here. She fumbled, touching the person's hand, and tremblingly opened her eyes. She immediately saw Mrs. Gable beside her. She looked around several times. Apart from the housekeeper, there was no one else. Remembering the voice she heard before she fainted, she involuntarily clutched the blanket in her hands. Had Uncle Lucas really been here? If he hadn't come, why did her room smell of him? If he had come, why didn't she see him when she woke up? She looked up at Mrs. Gable beside her and mustered the courage to ask, that day, was it Uncle Lucas who saved me? Who took care of me, Mrs. Gable's hand paused, then she said with a composed expression, It was the guards who saved you, Miss Vivian, and I've been taking care of you since. As for Mr. Thornton, he has been at the hospital looking after his fiancée these past few days. Vivian Foster lowered her eyes to hide the disappointment in them, a self-deprecating smile playing on her lips. Right, Uncle Lucas despised her so much now, how could he possibly come to save her? For the next few days, she didn't even see a glimpse of Lucas Thornton. It wasn't until this day, when the military compound was holding a social dance, that the man knocked on her room door. Looking at her gaunt face, a flicker of worry crossed his eyes, but it was quickly suppressed. His tone carried a hint of blame and dissatisfaction. Willow is kind-hearted and doesn't want to dwell on what happened last time. She also wants you to attend tonight's social dance. She nodded, her tone calm. I understand, Uncle Lucas. In the afternoon, Yolanda Warren came to ask her to go to the tailor shop to have a dress made, looking at the wall full of colorful fabrics. Vivian Foster also chose a piece of fabric and asked the tailor to make a dress for her. Yolanda Warren said in surprise, "Doesn't your Uncle Lucas usually take care of all your dresses? Why do you need to come out and have one made?" She touched the fabric in her hand, her eyes filled with swirling thoughts. Growing up, Lucas Thornton had taken care of all her clothes. He would not only hire a tailor to come to their home to measure her and make clothes, but also used imported fabrics from abroad, afraid that she would feel even a little uncomfortable wearing them. She smiled. That was in the past. Besides, he has a fiancée now, so it's not convenient anymore. As soon as she entered the hall, Lucas Thornton, standing in the center, spotted the girl quietly entering. Seeing the dress made of cheap fabric she was wearing, his brow couldn't help but furrow. He remembered sending someone to deliver her an imported dress today. Hadn't she seen it? Just as he was about to approach and ask her, melodious piano music drifted from a corner. This signaled the start of the opening dance. In the middle of the dance floor, handsome men and beautiful women danced gracefully to the pleasant sound of the piano. Watching Lucas Thornton gaze affectionately at the woman before him, her thoughts gradually drifted away. When she first learned to dance, she couldn't get the hang of it at all. After Lucas Thornton found out, he specially took time off to teach her. Because she was facing the person she liked, she was exceptionally nervous. After one dance, his leather shoes were covered in her footprints. She apologized, blushing, and wanted to give up. But he gently stroked her hair, smiled, and said it was okay, everyone has a first time, just learn slowly. After that, he patiently taught her several more times before she finally learned. And as a reward for her, every time there was a social dance, he would invite her for the opening dance. Now, the person dancing the opening dance with him was someone else. She suppressed her emotions and walked to a corner, where she happened to meet Director Peterson from the Ministry of Health, who was involved with the Africa Aid mission. Taking this opportunity, Director Peterson also seized the time to tell her about the precautions for going to Africa. The medical conditions there are backward. You should bring more medical supplies yourself. Aiding Africa isn't a matter of 1 or 2 years. She nodded, and just as she was about to speak, a male voice interrupted their conversation. What are you talking about? Aiding what? Vivian Foster turned around, and a familiar face met her eyes. Chapter 6. Director Peterson, seeing it was Lucas Thornton, asked with some surprise, "Officer Thornton, don't you know?" Vivian is going to AF before she could finish. Vivian Foster quickly interrupted. "Nothing, Uncle Lucas." "You misheard." Seeing her calm expression, the man didn't think much of it. Just then, Willow Myers called him from the other side. He didn't look at the two women again and turned to leave. Director Peterson looked back and forth between them several times, then turned to the person beside her in astonishment. "You didn't tell your Uncle Lucas about you going to Africa for aid." Vivian Foster looked at the intimate couple in the distance and said faintly, "He doesn't care about me anymore. There's no point in saying these things now." Director Peterson slapped her palm. "What nonsense are you talking? How could Officer Thornton not care about you? When you were little, you got lost once and didn't come home." Officer Thornton was frantic when he found out. He led a group of people and searched the entire capital. And that time you had a high fever that wouldn't break. He rushed you to the hospital like a madman and even called in many retired doctors. "You child, who in this world cares about you more than Officer Thornton?" Vivian Foster smiled but didn't reply. In 7 days, she would be going to Africa. Taking advantage of this last bit of time, Vivian Foster began to pack her belongings. It wasn't until the afternoon that she finished packing up the things that filled her room. Only then did Vivian Foster realize that more than half of the things in her room were gifts from Lucas Thornton. Her own belongings were pitifully few, barely filling a small half of her suitcase. She gave a wry smile. When she first came to Lucas Thornton's house, she had only brought this little. Now, as she was leaving, she was only taking this little away. Vivian Foster put her suitcase away and finally walked to the back garden with a shovel. Under a magnolia tree, she began to dig. She quickly unearthed the tin box she had buried there. She brushed off the dirt and removed the lid. Inside were all yellowed paper stars, and written inside each star was her love for Lucas Thornton. She grabbed a handful of stars, unfolded them one by one, and when she saw the childish handwriting on them, her eyes reddened slightly again. Winter, 1975. I fell in love with someone. He is my Uncle Lucas. Even though I know there's an age difference and a generational gap between us, I still love him recklessly. Summer, 1977. This is the third year I've loved him. I love him even more than last year. Autumn, 1979. I want to grow up quickly so I can stand by his side and tell him, Lucas Thornton, I don't want you to see me as a little girl. I love you. Finally, she took out a lighter from her pocket and lit the paper stars in the tin box. Meanwhile, Willow Myers had been thinking of going to the military compound to find Lucas Thornton and go out. But as she reached the backyard, she smelled smoke. Thinking there was a fire, she followed the smell of smoke and saw Vivian Foster kneeling in a corner, burning something. She quickly hid nearby. Only after Vivian had left did she open the gate and walk over. She picked up a piece of paper that hadn't completely burned. When she saw what was written on it, her eyes widened. The next morning, Vivian Foster had just bought some things and returned to the military compound when she saw many strangers gathered around Lucas Thornton's front door, pointing and whispering. When they saw her appear, the crowd's discussion grew louder. Look, that's her, isn't it? Yeah, so young and already so improper, actually falling for her own uncle. My goodness, for a young lady to do something like this, does she have no shame? Come, everyone, look, it's her. This is the one Officer Thornton kindly took her in and raised her, but she shamelessly fell in love with him and even wrote love letters. Ugly words assaulted her ears, one after another. Vivian Foster's eyes widened. Only then did she realize that the person leading the group was holding several slips of paper, the very ones she had burned yesterday. Hadn't she burned them all? How did they suddenly end up in these people's hands? Those slips of paper were thrust in front of her, one after another, making her eyes ache. In the chaos, the sound of a car horn came from a distance. A tall man got out of the car and walked towards her with a grim face. Seeing Lucas Thornton's murderous expression, the surrounding crowd instantly scattered like frightened mice. In the living room, the man stared at the girl before him, through the slips of paper which he had also received at the military base in front of her, his calm expression suddenly tinged with anger. Vivian Foster, these are the consequences of your feelings for me. Can you bear them now? Chapter 7, her eyes red, she looked at the man before her, about to say something, but then she wearily lowered her gaze. He didn't understand. He had never understood her. In the past, not a day went by when she didn't think that as long as he loved her, if he took even one step towards her, she would brave any danger. Even if she were condemned by thousands, she would press forward courageously. But now, he didn't love her, and these feelings had become meaningless. The man continued, I told you before to put away your feelings for me. Why did you still write these? This is my... Before she could finish, a figure in red burst in. Lucas Thornton, let's break off the engagement. Willow Myers rushed in, her eyes red, her slightly trembling voice revealing her vulnerability and helplessness, tears welling in her eyes. I just heard their discussions. Only then did I realize how much Vivian loves you. How can I accept this? She kept shaking her head, kept retreating. I'm sorry, I can't accept it. So let's break off the engagement. With that, she thrust the engagement token into his arms and rushed out without looking back. Willow, a flicker of panic crossed Lucas Thornton's eyes. He had no time for Vivian Foster and quickly chased after her. The main door was wide open, allowing Vivian Foster to clearly see the scene in the courtyard. As an officer, Lucas Thornton usually kept his emotions hidden. The only time he had lost control was years ago when she had been locked in the confinement room by those mischievous children. And this was the second time. She watched him pull the departing woman into his arms, her body involuntarily trembling. She clearly heard him say, I only see her as a junior, I don't like her, I only love you. Please don't break off the engagement, okay? She watched as he coaxed her for a long while before the woman in his arms finally smiled through her tears and turned to hug him back. Vivian Foster clenched her fists tightly. She clearly saw the woman, her chin resting on the man's shoulder, give her a provocative smile. She showed no expression in return and went back to her room. Later, Lucas Thornton used heavy-handed tactics to suppress these rumors, but to give Vivian Foster a warning. He confined her to the house and ordered Thornton's guards not to let her out without his permission. Vivian Foster didn't resist, sitting blankly by the window, watching the courtyard below. Sometimes it was Lucas Thornton in casual clothes, holding flowers, leaving the house with a gentle look in his eyes. Sometimes it was Willow Myers in a new dress he had given her, twirling in front of him. And sometimes it was the two of them, reluctantly embracing at the door, saying goodbye. People came and went, as if it all had nothing to do with her. Just then, she suddenly received an urgent letter. After reading its contents, her mind went blank, and she almost lost her footing. The letter said her grandma Esther was critically ill and wanted to see her one last time. After she became an orphan, her grandmother had wanted to take her home and raise her. But she was old, and having lost her only child, she lacked the energy. So, Lucas Thornton had taken care of her. But every holiday, her grandmother would send her lots of food. She frantically ran downstairs, about to rush out, but the guards stopped her. "Miss Vivian, you cannot leave without Mr. Thornton's permission." Right. Perhaps remembering this, Vivian Foster rushed to the landline phone and dialed his number. But perhaps because she was too flustered, she misdialed several numbers in a row. Finally, she pleaded with Mrs. Gable beside her to help her dial Lucas Thornton's number. Ring after ring, but no one answered on the other end. Her heart gradually sank. Finally, a sound came from the other end. Someone had picked up the receiver. Vivian Foster's dull eyes instantly lit up. Uncle Lucas, Willow Myers on the other end, paused for a moment before saying, "It's me, Vivian. Is something wrong?" Her eyes dimmed again, but she still spoke with a glimmer of hope. "I have something urgent for Uncle Lucas. Could you please let him take the call?" "Sorry, Lucas is taking a shower right now. It's not very convenient." Just then, a familiar male voice came from the other end. "Willow, whose call is it?" She immediately shouted towards the phone, "Uncle Lucas, it's me," but before she could finish, the phone was abruptly hung up. Listening to the cold dial tone, she collapsed to the floor, drained of strength. In that instant, she felt as if her only support had shattered. But thinking of her grandma Esther's weathered face, she still forced herself to get up and rush out. The guards were still as diligent as ever, refusing to let her leave. "Please, my grandmother is critically ill." Vivian Foster knelt on the floor, desperately clutching the arm of the man before her, her eyes full of pleading. But the other party remained unmoved, much like his superior. Large, crystal-like teardrops rolled down her pale cheeks. She burst into desperate sobs. "I want to go out. Let me out." She struggled desperately to get out, but the two guards held her back firmly. "Miss Vivian, without Mr. Thornton's orders, you cannot leave." The commotion woke the neighbors. Jasper Sheridan put on his coat and walked over, frowning. "What's going on?" Chapter 8. Vivian Foster looked up at the man at the door, her eyes filled with pleading. "Uncle Jasper, please, take me out." The man walked over and pulled her up. "What's wrong?" Prolonged crying made her voice tremble uncontrollably. My Grandma Esther, Grandma Esther." Jasper Sheridan patted her back soothingly, coaxing her gently and patiently. "No rush, speak slowly." The girl's hands clutched the man's clothes tightly. She took a deep breath, as if using all her strength. "My Grandma Esther is critically ill. Uncle Jasper, please, take me back to see her." Jasper Sheridan's expression hardened. He swept the girl into his arms and turned to leave. The two guards immediately moved to block him. "Get out of the way." The road to the countryside was rugged and bumpy. Coupled with the pouring rain, a journey that should have taken 3 hours took 4. Along the way, Vivian Foster wept silently, her eyes filled with despair. The man beside her held her hand tightly, offering comfort. Finally, the car stopped at Grandma Esther's doorstep. Before the car had fully stopped, the girl opened the door from the inside. Oblivious to the heavy rain, she rushed into her grandmother's house. But the next moment, she fell to her knees with a thud. Her eyes met a room draped in white mourning cloth, her ears filled with the sound of wails. And her Grandma Esther lay peacefully on the bed, her eyes closed. Grandma, her eyes grew increasingly vacant. She trembled, opening her mouth, wanting to cry out loud. But her voice was hoarse, she couldn't utter a single word. On the day of Grandma Esther's burial, it drizzled continuously. Vivian Foster knelt heavily on the ground before the tombstone. The name carved on the tombstone stung her eyes. She tremblingly raised her hand, gently caressing the name on the tombstone. "Grandma!" Tears streamed down from the corners of her eyes, falling drop by drop onto the ground. Jasper Sheridan stood beside her, holding an umbrella for her, silently watching the scene. The rain gradually grew heavier. Another person holding an umbrella slowly approached. Lucas Thornton had rushed over. Seeing this scene, he felt his heart suddenly clench. "Vivian!" His soothing and familiar voice sounded above her head. "Vivian, don't blame Willow. She hung up on you by accident." Even at a time like this, he was still making excuses for Willow Myers. She gave a self-deprecating laugh, clenched her fists, and struggled to suppress the bitterness and anger in her heart. Without a word, she turned and left, perhaps out of guilt, perhaps out of unease. For the next few days, Lucas Thornton had planned to stay home and keep her company, but Willow Myers called, urging him to go back with her to meet her parents. Lucas Thornton stroked Vivian Foster's hair. It had been 5 days. She ate little, drank little, stayed at home every day without speaking or going out, as if she had lost her soul. "Vivian, why don't you stay home today, okay? Uncle Lucas will be back to keep you company later." Vivian Foster slowly looked up. It was the first time she had spoken in days, her tone exceptionally calm. "You go." Those 3 short words made Lucas Thornton's heart tighten. He instinctively sensed something was wrong, but Willow Myers was pressing him relentlessly. He had no time to think further, grabbed his coat, and left. Vivian Foster just silently watched his retreating figure until it gradually disappeared from her sight. Only when he was completely gone did she stand up, return to her room, and start packing her luggage. Today was the day the African Aid medical team was departing. She was leaving first. She took out the suitcase she had packed long ago. Then, she put all the gifts Lucas Thornton had given her over the past decade or so into a large cardboard box. Over the years, Lucas Thornton had doted on her immensely. The gifts he gave her were not only beautiful, but also very rare, most of them imported from abroad. She first picked up the aromatherapy diffuser from the table, caressing it carefully. This was the first gift he had given her. At that time, she couldn't sleep night after night because she missed her parents. To help her sleep well, he had specially sent people everywhere to inquire about sleep-aiding items. Finally, he found this box of aromatherapy. Aromatherapy had just been imported from abroad then, and quantities were scarce. He had stood in the rain for a day and a night to finally get one. When he returned, he was soaked to the bone, yet he carefully took out the aromatherapy from his raincoat, completely untouched by a single drop of water. Ever since she had the aromatherapy, she had sweet dreams every night. But on the day of her confession, he had smashed the diffuser fiercely on the ground, and it could no longer be lit. Vivian Foster carefully placed it in the box. Then she began to pack up the other gifts. Finally, her gaze rested on the wardrobe. There was a red dress there, custom made for her by a master tailor he had hired for her coming-of-age day. She had worn it to dance the opening dance with him time and time again. But after he brought Willow Myers home, this dress had been forgotten in a corner, collecting a thick layer of dust. Finally, the cardboard box was filled with gifts from him, and the entire room became empty, as if she had never been there. Vivian Foster took one last, deep look at the room, as if to leave all her past memories behind. With a click, the door was firmly closed. She placed the cardboard box outside Lucas Thornton's room. Finally, carrying her luggage, she walked out of the home she had lived in for 14 years without hesitation. It was late at night when Lucas Thornton returned home. He got out of the car as usual. Just as he was about to step onto the stairs, he suddenly paused upon seeing the darkened room on the second floor. In the past, no matter how late he returned, the light in that second-floor room was always on. Even after he brought Willow Myers home, that light had never gone out. Now, it was pitch black. An inexplicable unease stirred in his heart. The man hurriedly climbed the stairs and pushed open the main door. Looking up, there was no one in the living room except for the two housekeepers. He finally couldn't help but ask, "Where's Miss Vivian? Asleep?" The two housekeepers exchanged a glance, then stammered, "Sir, Miss Vivian left with her suitcase early this morning. We don't know where she went. Do you want to look for her?" His hand, which was taking off his coat, paused. He remembered that whenever Vivian Foster threw a tantrum, she would go back to the old family house for a few days. This time, she must still be angry about her grandmother. The man's heart was suddenly in turmoil, but he forcibly suppressed his unease. No need. She's just staying at the old house for a few days. She'll be back in a few days. With that, he turned to leave again. But as soon as he opened the door, he saw Franklin Finn Rogers walk in with a newspaper, punching him lightly on the chest. Well, your Vivian has done something so significant, and you actually kept it from us. Do you still consider us brothers? His eyes were full of incomprehension. The next second, he saw Finn Rogers thrust the newspaper in front of him. It was a group photo taken in front of an airplane. He immediately recognized Vivian Foster in the center and the headline above read, "Great love of medics transcends borders. Our nation's 26th medical aid team to Africa departed from the airport today for the mission area in Tanzania Chapter 9. A buzz went through Lucas Thornton's mind. Leaving it completely blank, his pupils contracted violently, as if a blazing fire was about to erupt from his eyes. Vivian Foster went to Africa for aid? When did this happen? How did he not know? Seeing his clueless expression, Finn Rogers looked astonished. The girl didn't tell you about this. The man's hand gripped the newspaper tightly, his knuckles white from excessive force. An aura of anger emanated from him. Seeing this, Finn Rogers quickly tried to placate him. Hey, don't be angry. It's a good thing for the girl to go to Africa for aid. Not only does it bring glory to the country, but it also brings honor to your name. Listening to his words, Lucas Thornton calmed down. But the thought of her, so pampered, going to such a dangerous place, ignited another surge of anger within him. No, he had to bring her back immediately. Thinking this, he strode to his car and drove towards the Ministry of Health. When Director Peterson learned of his purpose, she refused outright. Mr. Thornton, this is simply impossible. You must understand, everyone who goes on an aid mission to Africa has important tasks. They cannot return to the country casually without permission. Moreover, when Comrade Foster left, she was even prepared to never return. Prepared to never return, he was so shocked his body nearly swayed. The phrase replayed endlessly in his mind. The rain began to fall heavily, and the sound of thunder rumbled, making one's mood increasingly irritable. After Lucas Thornton got out of the car, he didn't even bother with an umbrella and went straight up the stairs. As soon as he reached his room door, he saw the large cardboard box. He froze for a moment, then bent down, picked up the box, and took it into the room with him. He sat cross-legged on the floor, reached out, and opened the box. The moment he saw its contents, his breath caught. Inside were all the things he had given her over the years: a small toy from when she was 6, a little dress from when she was 10, a bracelet from when she was 20. Every single item was neatly placed inside by the girl. His knuckles, gripping the edge of the cardboard box, turned white from the force. She had returned everything to him. Did she really not want to come back? But wasn't this the outcome he had wanted from the beginning? The moment he learned of the girl's feelings, he was filled with shock and fear. In this era, even a little gossip could be fatal, let alone the fact that he was her elder. How could he agree to it? The only way was to constantly push her away. For this, he had agreed to Willow Myers, who had been pursuing him. Now she had truly left him for Africa, possibly never to return. Why wasn't he as happy as he had imagined? He closed the box again, pushed it aside, and dismissed the strange feeling in his heart as a reaction to her sudden departure. Now that he had successfully achieved his goal, it was time for him and Willow Myers to end things. Thinking this, he drove to the Myers house again. The entire Myers household was silent. Not a soul was around. Just as he was thinking of coming back another time, Willow Myers's voice suddenly came from a closed room nearby. "Mom, don't worry, Lucas will definitely marry me. You know, after I deliberately fell down the stairs last time, he locked Vivian Foster in the confinement room just to vent my anger. As for those rumors you heard about Vivian Foster liking Lucas, they are indeed true. But I was the one who deliberately leaked them, who told her to be so stupid as to not even burn the notes completely. And that music box she gave him, there was a sum of money and a farewell letter in the bottom. What a fool. Lucas despised her so much, why would he care about these things? It was me, his fiancée, who was sensible enough to secretly throw them away for him. He didn't clearly hear the rest. All the previous doubts and puzzling incidents were now answered. At the time, he truly believed Vivian Foster was responsible for those things, so he thought he would play along with her schemes to push her as far away as possible. Now, he was being told the truth. Willow Myers had done all of it, remembering Vivian's tear-filled eyes back then. A wave of guilt surged from the bottom of his heart. He abruptly pushed the door open. When the two people inside saw it was him, a flicker of panic crossed their eyes. Willow Myers, however, still pretended to be calm, stood up, and walked towards him. "Lucas, why are you here? Are you here to take me back?" His thin lips parted, his gaze chilling to the extreme. "Are you saying you deliberately fell down the stairs back then?" Chapter 10. Hearing this, her pupils constricted. She tucked a few stray strands of hair behind her ear, forcing herself to remain calm. "Lucas, what are you talking about? I don't understand." The man sneered. "Is that so? Then I'll go to the hospital and ask. There were so many people at the hospital then, surely someone saw something?" With that, he turned to leave, but the next second, his sleeve was tightly grasped. "Don't," he turned back. The woman before him was pale, her eyes full of pleading. If he really went to the hospital to ask, her reputation would be ruined. The outside gossip would definitely kill her. The man pulled her hand away, his eyes unconsciously tinged with a dark emotion. "Why?" Willow Myers's hand dropped limply. She bit her lip and stammered for a long time, unable to utter a word. How should she explain? She had been pampered since childhood. Whatever she wanted, her family would satisfy her. Ever since she fell for Lucas Thornton, she had tried every means to get close to him. As a soldier, he would surely get injured often, so the hospital would be a place he frequented. She just had to whine to her parents a little, and they secured a position for her at the hospital. But later, she found the hospital boring. Plus, she was already Lucas Thornton's fiancée, so she no longer needed to painstakingly try to get close to him. That's why she thought of resigning from the hospital. But the hospital was short-staffed, and Director Harrison wouldn't let her go easily. It just so happened that she ran into Vivian Foster when she came out. As soon as she finished speaking, she saw his usually gentle expression turn gloomy, his deep, ink-black eyes looking as if they were about to stir up a storm. Willow Myers instinctively took a step back, not daring to look directly into his dark eyes. But the anticipated storm didn't come. The man merely extended his hand towards her. "That letter and that money?" Seeing the woman remain silent for a long time, his voice couldn't help but grow heavier. "Speak." This roar made her eyes immediately redden, her voice trembling. I threw that letter away." "Willow Myers, how dare you?" Mrs. Alina Myers, who was inside, couldn't bear to watch any longer. Just as she was about to step forward to defend her daughter, a look from the man made her dare not take another step. Willow Myers was filled with resentment. They were already engaged. Why couldn't she touch his things? Besides, when he gave her the music box, he had clearly said his things were hers. She hadn't done anything wrong by touching them. Why was he so angry? That's what she thought, and that's what she said. Lucas Thornton laughed in anger, his icy brows arching coldly. Not for long. She abruptly looked up, screaming, no longer caring about her previous composure. "Lucas Thornton, what do you mean?" He, however, couldn't be bothered to explain, still holding out his hand. "Even if the letter is lost, the money should still be there, right? If you don't bring it out, a charge of embezzlement will send you straight to prison." Hearing this, Mrs. Myers, disregarding everything else, quickly took an envelope from the bedside table and handed it to him. The man examined it carefully, confirmed it hadn't been opened, then turned and left without a trace of mercy. Only when his figure was completely out of sight did she collapse to the ground. News of the Thorntons and Myerses breaking off their engagement quickly spread throughout the capital. A crowd of gossips gathered in front of the Myers house, pointing and whispering. The Myers family hadn't done much good in recent years anyway. If it weren't for their daughter's good fortune in latching onto Lucas Thornton, their doorstep would have long been crowded with people cursing them. Now that Lucas Thornton had proposed to break off the engagement, everyone swarmed to hurl all sorts of abuse at their family. Finally, the Myers family couldn't take it anymore. They came to the Thornton house, begging the man to spare them, but he didn't even open the main door. In the end, it was Mr. Arthur Myers SR, who had been in seclusion for a long time, who knocked on the Thorntons' door. The old man hadn't concerned himself with outside affairs since his seclusion, but this time the matter was quite serious. Plus, Willow Myers was his only grandchild. His heart was still a little biased, but a few words from the man dispelled his bias. "Mr. Myers SR, do you know that because of her selfishness, not only was Vivian subjected to public condemnation, but she even missed her last chance to see her grandmother?" The old man remained silent, eventually leaving with a sense of loss. Later, it was heard that Willow Myers was sent by Mr. Myers SR to a barren countryside. Without his permission, no one was allowed to bring her back. Chapter 11. After resolving matters on the side, Lucas Thornton decided to go to Africa to find Vivian Foster. He wanted to explain things clearly to her that he was indeed at fault in some matters, but he also had his reasons. Most importantly, he hadn't realized at the time that her grandmother was critically ill. Willow Myers had lied to him, saying her grandmother had passed away long ago, so there was no point in letting Vivian go back. That's why he had thought of using this opportunity to give her the cold shoulder, to make her give up on him completely. Then he would take her back the next day, but Jasper Sheridan had beaten him to it. Later, when he arrived at the cemetery, he had wanted to apologize to her, but seeing Jasper Sheridan holding an umbrella for her, he found the sight somewhat jarring. So the apology on the tip of his tongue turned into words asking her to forgive Willow Myers. His heart was constantly in a turmoil of conflicting emotions. He quickly ran to the headquarters and applied to Commander Thompson to go to Africa as part of the security team to ensure the safety of the aid personnel. Before Lucas Thornton arrived, Commander Alastair Thompson had just stamped and signed the previous application list. After hearing his request, he sighed regretfully. "Lucas, you're one step too late. The quota for the security team going to Africa this time is already full." He clenched his fists, pursing his lips. "Then, Commander, may I ask when the next batch will be?" The commander looked at the calendar on the side. "That would be 2 years from now." Lucas Thornton gave a bitter smile, saluted Commander Thompson, and left dejectedly. On the tree-lined avenue, he stared blankly at the street scene ahead, his heart sinking deeper and deeper. 2 years. When they met again then, would she still forgive him? As soon as he returned home, Mrs. Gable approached him, holding something in her hand. "Sir, someone from the Sheridan family came this morning and brought this letter. They said it was the letter Miss Vivian wrote back then. They found it and specially delivered it to you." Hearing it was Vivian Foster's letter, he immediately took it, tore open the seal, and took out the letter paper inside. "Uncle Lucas, this is the last time I'll call you that. Thank you very much for raising me for so many years. So, I've also returned the money from all these years to you. You once asked me if we were together, whether I could bear the outside gossip. I think as long as we love each other, I can bear it. But you don't love me, and I've lost the courage to face it alone. But it doesn't matter anymore. From the day you rejected my confession, I stopped loving you. Uncle Lucas, goodbye." The man's fingers, clutching the letter, gradually turned white, even trembling. He tried to take a deep breath, wanting to suppress the strange feeling in his heart. But that strange feeling was like a flooding tide, unstoppable, eventually spreading throughout his entire body. "Mrs. Gable, seeing him like this, quickly came forward with concern, but before she could speak. The man crumpled the letter into a ball, turned, went upstairs, and tightly closed his room door. All of this had nothing to do with Vivian Foster, who was far away in Africa. Their aid team received a warm welcome from the local people as soon as they got off the plane. Then they took a special car to Dodoma, the capital of Tanzania. Soon, they threw themselves wholeheartedly into their aid work in Africa. To make her work easier, she changed her braids to shoulder-length short hair and put on the simplest work clothes. In less than a month, she looked completely different. Neat short hair, a tanned and lean body, but her eyes were full of light. So much so that when Jasper Sheridan saw her, he almost didn't recognize her. "Vivian." She instinctively looked towards him and saw a man in a green military uniform standing at the door. "Uncle Jasper?" Vivian Foster put down her pen and walked towards him in pleasant surprise. "Uncle Jasper, why have you come to Africa?" Jasper Sheridan hugged her before explaining, "The superiors specially sent us to Africa to protect your safety." After speaking, he looked her up and down again, specifically asking about her recent situation. Only after confirming she was fine did he breathe a sigh of relief. He then chatted with her about things back home, but both of them tacitly avoided mentioning that person's name. Chapter 12. For the next few months, the two of them were incredibly busy. Only during mealtimes could they relax and chat. By the way, are you really not planning to go back in the future? Jasper Sheridan's sudden question made her pause. She finished the last piece of grilled meat on her plate, then put down her fork and shook her head. Go back for what? To continue being pointed at and insulted by the people in the military compound, or to watch Lucas Thornton and Willow Myers's sweet daily life. Besides, she was just a guest in Lucas's house. Once Willow Myers married and moved in, she would have to move out. But she had lost her parents long ago, and her only grandmother had recently passed away. Where could she go if she went back? It was better to just stay here. What about you? As they had become familiar, she no longer called him uncle, but by his name. Jasper Sheridan smiled. I probably won't go back either. She was about to ask why when someone called her name from a distance. She nodded apologetically to the man and got up to leave. Time flew by, and 2 years passed in a flash. Vivian Foster had just finished writing her application to extend her stay when someone knocked on her window from outside. She turned her head and saw Jasper Sheridan smiling, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. She quickly got up and opened the window. Vivian, want to go out and have some fun? Since coming to Tanzania, she had rarely gone out due to work. This was her first time going out for fun. Where to? The man looked up at the calendar on her desk. It's July now. It's perfect timing to go to Serengeti National Park to see the great animal migration. The girl's eyes instantly lit up. Are we going now? Yes, pack up, and we'll set off with the main group. A dozen or so SUVs drove majestically across the African savanna. Under the setting sun, the sky gradually became tinged with a soft amber hue, like a vast land draped in golden silk. On the boundless grassland, various animals ran freely. She marveled at the beautiful scenery before her while continuously pressing the shutter button on her camera. Soon, everyone got out of their vehicles at the destination, set up tents, and lit a campfire. As the sky darkened, nocturnal animals began their activities. Various howls intertwined, sending an involuntary shiver down one's spine. She instinctively shrank closer to Jasper Sheridan. The man looked at her amusedly. Scared, but she stubbornly said, "No, it's just a bit cold." He didn't expose her lie, just draped the blanket from his shoulders onto hers. He then ladled a bowl of hot meat broth from the camp pot and handed it to her. Blow on it before you drink. Warm yourself up. Vivian Foster nodded and carefully took the bowl of soup. The dawn light cast a hazy glow over the land. The morning sun filtered through the dense foliage, casting dancing shadows of leaves across the tent, countless spots of light flickering on the fabric, an interplay of light and shadow. With a zip, she unzipped the tent and was immediately captivated by the scenery before her. Awake! A male voice sounded from above her head. She crawled out of the tent and smiled at him. Good morning. Soon, the team reassembled and set off for the Mara River, known as Africa's River of Blood, a crucial point in this animal migration. Every year, over 1.5 million wildebeest, 250,000 zebras, and countless antelopes cross this area. The scene of the river crossing could only be described as breathtakingly perilous. Due to the scarcity of crossing points, tens of thousands of animals would surge towards the same crossing at the same time, with stampedes likely to occur at any moment due to overcrowding. The turbulent river water varied in depth, and many young, old, or weak animals would be swept away by the current or drown. Meanwhile, large numbers of crocodiles lay in ambush in the river, suddenly attacking and capturing the slower, moving wildebeest and zebras. Blood stained the entire river red, and the smell of blood and earth filled the air. She and Jasper Sheridan sat on the roof of the SUV, watching this scene from afar, their hearts filled with myriad emotions. Over the next few days, they also took a hot air balloon ride to view the entire savanna from above. Soon, the time for leisure passed. It was time for them to part. Chapter 13, the 2-year security mission was coming to an end. Jasper Sheridan had initially said he wouldn't return, but he couldn't withstand the pressure from Mr. Edward Sheridan S.R.'s letters and orders from his superiors. He had to end his mission and return to the capital. After 2 years together, she had also developed a reliance on the man before her. Before she could speak, the man in front of her delivered some rather bad news. Lucas Thornton was coming. She hadn't heard that name in over 2 years, so she was momentarily dazed and didn't quite register it. "Who did you say?" Jasper Sheridan sighed. "During the handover, I saw the list of the next batch of security personnel on their desk. The first name was Lucas Thornton." She couldn't help but clench her fists. What was he coming here for? Shouldn't he be in the country living a happy life with Willow Myers? What was he doing in Africa? She didn't delude herself into thinking he was coming for her. After all, the moment he rejected her confession, there was no longer a place for her in his heart. Jasper Sheridan looked at her with concern. He had heard a little about her and Lucas Thornton. What he remembered most vividly was Lucas Thornton locking her in the house, preventing her from seeing her grandmother for the last time. That was her only living relative in the world. How could Lucas Thornton be so cruel? "Vivian, I should stay and keep you company." Besides, given Lucas Thornton's personality, if he found out she had left without saying goodbye, who knew what he might do to her? Vivian Foster shook her head. There was no need. She and Lucas Thornton had already severed ties. He had no reason to do anything to her. At the airport on the other side, Lucas Thornton limped off the plane, looking at the unfamiliar surroundings, his gaze deepening. Vivian, ever since missing the opportunity to go to Africa 2 years ago, he had quickly signed up for the next deployment. However, on the eve of departure, he accidentally fell down the stairs, resulting in a sprained ankle. His superiors had told him to recuperate at home and go to Africa with the next batch. But he, eager to see Vivian Foster sooner, had politely declined and insisted on boarding the plane. The thought of seeing her soon filled his heart with many things he wanted to say to her. But when he truly saw her, he found himself unable to utter a single word. Director Samuel Finch, beside him, enthusiastically introduced Vivian Foster and the others to the new batch of security personnel. When it was his turn to be introduced, she didn't extend her hand to shake his. Instead, her tone was distant. "Mr. Thornton, nice to meet you." With that, she didn't look at his reaction and turned to leave. Only Director Finch and he were left looking at each other. After all, she was a young woman Director Finch had looked after for 2 years. He subconsciously explained on her behalf. "Mr. Thornton, please understand. Comrade Foster has been too busy with work recently and hasn't rested well, so—" Lucas Thornton, however, shook his head, indicating it was fine. He looked at the retreating figure in the distance, his eyes filled with worry and guilt. Of course she hadn't rested well. She had lost so much weight. For the next few days, he kept trying to find an opportunity to talk to her alone, but he didn't know if Vivian Foster was deliberately avoiding him. Let alone chat, he hadn't even seen her. Finally, he asked Director Finch, who only said she had several major surgeries recently. The implication was clear. He shouldn't look for her for the time being. Until this day, when they were bidding farewell to the previous batch of security personnel returning home, he finally found an opportunity. Just as he was about to step forward, a figure stepped ahead of him and hugged her tightly. And that was Jasper Sheridan. An inexplicable anger rose in the man's heart. Just as he was about to push Jasper Sheridan away, he remembered their current relationship status. He had no right to do so. He could only watch helplessly as the two of them held each other quietly, the people around them long accustomed to it. Faced with Jasper Sheridan's sudden embrace, Vivian Foster was momentarily stunned, but eventually, she reached out and hugged him back. "Vivian, do you remember what I said to you when we went to see the great animal migration?" That night, they had sat shoulder to shoulder on the roof of the car, watching the vast starry sky, and talked about many, many things. Among them was his confession. He had laid a lot of groundwork, talking about how he had come to like her. But because she had just experienced a failed confession, she didn't know how to respond to him. Jasper Sheridan had also expressed his understanding, saying only that he was willing to wait. Asking her now wasn't to get an answer, but to tell her that he was still waiting for her. In the end, she didn't reply, only wished him a safe journey, then released her hands and watched him board the plane. Chapter 14. On the way back, Vivian Foster stared blankly out the window, her hand tightly clutching a bracelet, a gift Jasper Sheridan had slipped to her as he boarded the plane. After getting out of the car, just as she was about to head to her room, a tall figure blocked her path. Looking at the man she hadn't seen in 2 years, she sighed silently in her heart. What was bound to happen would eventually happen. "Mr. Thornton, is there something you need from me?" Hearing the girl address him distantly as Mr. Thornton, a flicker of pain crossed his eyes. It was in this moment that he finally understood what that strange feeling bubbling up from the bottom of his heart 2 years ago truly was. It was love. How ridiculous. Only at this moment did he realize he had fallen in love with the girl long ago. When was it? He couldn't remember clearly. Perhaps because he had never loved anyone before, he had mistaken this love for something else. And that's why he had pushed her away time and time again, causing her so much pain. Seeing him remain silent for a long time, she frowned impatiently. Just as she was about to speak, she heard his familiar voice beside her ear. "Vivian, I'm sorry." Was she hearing things, or had she not slept well last night? She looked up at the man before her in surprise. What did he just say? Sorry. What was he apologizing to her for? The man continued, "It was my fault in the past." At that time, although her confession had caused him some aversion, deep down, he still subconsciously wanted to protect her. So after she pushed Willow Myers down the stairs, he had locked her in the confinement room. Not to punish her, but to act before the Myers family retaliated so they wouldn't have much to say. Regarding the love letter incident, he hadn't anticipated that her grandmother would suddenly pass away afterward. When he came out of the shower that day, he saw Willow Myers hang up the phone in a panic. When he asked her, she lied to him. He had wanted to go home then, but Willow Myers had clung to him, even using the love letter incident to argue. She had even fainted. After all, it was on his turf. If something happened to her, he wouldn't be able to explain it to the Myers family. It was just that 1 hour's difference that eternally separated her from her grandmother. The man said many, many things, but Vivian Foster not only showed no reaction, the expression in her eyes grew colder and colder. A surge of anger rose from her heart. She clenched her fists, trying hard to calm herself. Only when he finished speaking and looked at her expectantly did she slowly begin to speak. "So, you deliberately used Willow Myers to make me give up on you, so I would stay away from you. But after I left, you realized you had already fallen in love with me, so now you want to apologize and win me back? Listen to that. What kind of joke was this?" She laughed bitterly, a hint of mockery flashing in her eyes. "Lucas Thornton, do you know, if you had said you liked me on the day I confessed, I would have been overjoyed. But why now of all times?" After she had completely given up on him, after she had come to distant Tanzania to avoid him. Seeing the girl like this, his heart inexplicably panicked. He wanted to pull her into his arms, but she instinctively took a step back. Vivian Foster took a deep breath and looked seriously at the man before her. "In these 2 years, I've also remembered many things. Indeed, my affection was too impulsive. I didn't consider the consequences and caused you a certain amount of trouble. So I want to apologize to you." The decisiveness and seriousness in her eyes made him close his eyes in pain and shake his head. "Vivian, don't apologize to me. You did nothing wrong. It was my fault." If he had been willing to recognize his love back then, to bravely face the gossip with her, they might not have ended up like this. But he had to mistake love for anger, and to avoid her, he pushed her out alone to face those rumors. "Lucas Thornton, from the moment you rejected me, there was no longer any possibility between us." Chapter 15, From now on, let's just be normal uncle and niece. By the way, when I return to the country, I'll move my household registration out of your families. After all, Willow Myers is the mistress there. No, Willow Myers and I have already broken off our engagement. You don't need to move out. Hearing his words, a flicker of surprise crossed her eyes, but then she thought of all the bad things Willow Myers had done to her. This outcome was inevitable. "Vivian," he took a deep breath, his eyes like shattered starlight, his voice trembling slightly. "Do we really have to become like this?" He couldn't imagine what it would be like for them to be just a normal uncle and niece, but that was also the outcome he was most unwilling to face. Vivian Foster smiled sarcastically. "Isn't this the result you wanted from the beginning?" With that, she didn't look at him again and returned to her room. No candle was lit in the dark room. By the moonlight from outside, one could see the girl curled up by the bed, her face streaked with tears. She thought she wouldn't cry for him anymore. After all, on the night he rejected her confession and threw away her diaries and sketchbooks, she had cried all her tears out. But today, when she heard him apologize to her, saying he liked her too, a wave of grievance welled up in her heart. How could there be such a person? Harming her again and again, pushing her away repeatedly, making her completely give up on him, and then eagerly coming back, a light apology, as if to erase all the scars he had inflicted on her. As if to make her throw herself back into his arms. How could that be possible? She took a deep breath, wiped away her tears, and fell asleep on the wooden bed in her clothes. For the next few days, perhaps because they had cleared the air, Lucas Thornton seemed like a changed person. Wherever she was, he would be there. Looking at the person opposite her, she frowned tightly. What do you mean by this? The man looked at her seriously, the former coldness gone from his brow. Vivian, can you give me a chance to make amends? We shouldn't be like this. His words instantly made her lose her appetite. She put down her fork, looked at the man before her with immense impatience, and threw back the words he had once said to her. Lucas Thornton, there's a 12-year age difference between us. It's impossible. Besides, you're my elder. If we really got together, how would outsiders see us? Can you bear those rumors? What if it affects our future? His hand on the table gradually tightened, then quickly loosened. He looked at her resolutely. I can accept it. Vivian Foster, however, stood up directly, looking at him coldly. But I can't accept it. I don't have the courage to face those rumors a second time. With that, she didn't look at him again and left straight away, leaving him sitting alone at the table, holding his forehead and laughing bitterly. It's okay, take it slow. After that day, both of them tacitly avoided mentioning the matter again. In the morning, Director Finch specially called her to his office. Comrade Foster, regarding your application to delay your return to the country, are you really sure about this? Although Director Peterson had told him before she left that Vivian Foster had no intention of returning. Now, her time in Africa was almost up. Many people at this point were eager to go home, even having packed their luggage. But only she showed no sign of wanting to leave. Vivian Foster remained silent, her thoughts drifting far away. When she first came to Africa, she indeed had the thought of never returning. After all, besides contributing to the aid mission, she also wanted to never see Lucas Thornton again, who knew that 2 years later, he would follow her here. But to give up 2 years of hard work and achievements just for him really wasn't worth it. She didn't believe Lucas Thornton could stay here forever. Just in case, she still carefully asked, Director Finch, I'd like to ask, does the security team have to return to the country once their time is up? Can they sign up again next time? Director Finch, however, thought she was asking about Jasper Sheridan and shook his head regretfully. Yes, they must return to the country once their time is up. Because of their special status, there is no next chance. If you really can't bear to part with Jasper Sheridan, you might as well take this opportunity to go back together. Although he's 10 years older than you, older men are also more caring. Her face inexplicably reddened, but she still shook her head. Director Finch, you've misunderstood. I was just asking casually. So, if I don't go back this time, does that mean I can never go back? Oh dear, what kind of talk is that? Doctors have much more freedom. If you don't go back this time, you can only go back 2 years later, and so on. Chapter 16. Vivian Foster breathed a sigh of relief. After thanking Director Finch, she opened the door and left. Just as she stepped out, she bumped into a hard chest, the impact sending her staggering back several steps. Careful, the man quickly grabbed her hand, and with that support, she steadied herself. Just as she was about to thank him, Lucas Thornton's face came into view. She instinctively pulled her hand away and started to walk off. Vivian, the man chased after her, grabbing her arm. Are you planning never to return to the country? The girl paused, turned her head, and looked at him. You heard everything? He looked at the person before him. Her face was full of indifference. A pang of pain started from their clasped hands, gradually enveloping his entire body. He took a deep breath. Why? Was it because of him? But if she stayed here alone, her safety couldn't be guaranteed. She looked at him, treating him merely as an ordinary elder, and said faintly, For everything I do, I've clearly considered the consequences. I can be responsible for my own safety. Lucas Thornton, I'm not hiding from you. I just can't bear to part with my efforts and achievements of the past 2 years. I'm unwilling to leave so easily. When I've gained more and am satisfied, I will naturally return. He looked straight into her eyes, seemingly trying to discern some other emotion, but there was nothing but clarity and determination. Besides, we already settled things between us that day. From now on, I will treat you as an ordinary elder." It was unclear if her words had an effect, but Lucas Thornton rarely sought her out after that. She was happy with the peace and quiet. In the blink of an eye, 2 years passed, and it was soon time for Lucas Thornton to leave Africa. Before that, they traditionally went to the airport to welcome the next batch of security forces. Just as all the security forces were disembarking, she saw a familiar person at the end of the crowd. Jasper Sheridan, having not seen him for 2 years, seeing him appear before her again made her eyes involuntarily redden. Vivian Foster, forgetting everything else, rushed forward and hugged him tightly. The man was stunned for a moment, then hugged her back. "Long time no see, Vivian." This affectionate scene moved others deeply. In a corner, Lucas Thornton clenched his fists, a bitter smile on his face. The two of them hugged for a while before she let go, puzzled. "Why are you here?" According to Director Finch, people in their line of work rarely had a second chance for an overseas mission. The man raised the camera in his hand and smiled. "I switched to being a journalist." "Huh." Only then did she realize he wasn't wearing a military uniform, but casual clothes. Jasper Sheridan stroked her head, his eyes full of tenderness. During the 2 years they were apart, he couldn't sleep at night because he missed her. Moreover, Lucas Thornton was still by her side. How could this put his mind at ease? But with his status, it was difficult to go abroad again. Coincidentally, the propaganda department was recruiting new journalists to come to Africa to take photos and publicize the work of the aid personnel. He then voluntarily applied to transfer and become a journalist in Africa. Faced with his sudden decision, Mr. and Mrs. Sheridan were initially not very pleased. But Mr. Edward Sheridan SR tapped his cane. "Jasper has listened to you since he was a child. He did whatever you asked him to do. Now that he finally has some ideas of his own, why can't you support him a little?" Only then did Mr. and Mrs. Sheridan stop opposing. Afterward, Jasper Sheridan asked his grandfather why he didn't object. After all, when he first joined the army, his grandfather had been the happiest. The old man snorted. "You rascal, don't think I can't see who you're going to Africa as a journalist for back then, to snatch the last spot for the Africa security mission." He had actually come to beg him for the first time. Jasper Sheridan chuckled, saying nothing. Hearing his words, Vivian Foster's heart was filled with complex emotions. Chapter 17, she was happy that she could see him again, but also felt a pang of sorrow that he had given up a promising future to come to Africa to see her. If he were in the capital, with the Sheridan family's status, every step of his future would be guided. But he had come to Africa. From now on, every step he took would depend on himself. Moreover, the conditions here were extremely harsh. What if something happened to him? Perhaps the worry in her eyes was too obvious. Jasper Sheridan patted her shoulder. "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing." Soon, the group returned to the base, but before they could rest, a whistle suddenly blew. Vivian Foster quickly scrambled out of bed and ran outside. She saw a group of people standing there. Even the security team members had run out. Lucas Thornton, seeing the girl who had just come out, was about to step forward to comfort her when another figure beat him to it, stepping forward and putting an arm around her shoulder in a comforting gesture. His foot, which had been about to lift, retracted, and Director Finch, standing in front of the crowd, looked grave. "There's a sudden flu outbreak in the neighboring village. We urgently need our medical staff to go and support them. Everyone, prepare immediately. The disaster is an order. We depart in half an hour." The crowd dispersed again. Vivian Foster hurried back to her room, packed all usable medical supplies into her medical kit, put on her protective gear, and was about to push open the door to leave. But just as she stepped out, Lucas Thornton blocked her. "Vivian, I'll go with you this time." Her eyes were full of opposition. "Lucas Thornton, what madness is this at a time like this? That's the flu if you accidentally get infected. It could be fatal, but I'm a doctor. I can ensure my own safety. What about you?" With that, she walked around him and got straight into the vehicle. The moment the door closed, a familiar voice came from beside her. "Vivi!" Vivian Foster looked at the man beside her in surprise, her tone involuntarily tinged with anger. "Jasper Sheridan, what are you, a journalist, doing here? What if you get infected?" Just as she had said to Lucas Thornton, as a doctor, she could ensure her own safety. Moreover, since coming to Africa, she had received a preventive vaccine every month. He hadn't even been vaccinated. going to a flu-stricken area was no different from seeking death. Jasper Sheridan rolled up his sleeve, pointed to the mark on his shoulder, proving he had been vaccinated. But her eyes still showed disapproval. He quickly raised the camera hanging around his neck. "Don't worry, I would never joke with my own life. I'll just take a few photos from a distance. I absolutely won't step half a foot into the critical zone." Meanwhile, a young soldier was about to get into the driver's seat. A large hand suddenly barred his way. He turned to see Lucas Thornton standing beside him. "Sir, what is this?" "The situation in the flu zone is still unclear. You're still young. I'll go." Night gradually gave way to dawn. The vehicle carrying the medical personnel soon entered the flu-stricken area. Faced with unknown dangers, everyone involuntarily clenched their hands. Fortunately, some of the medical staff had experience with influenza. Under their guidance, everyone proceeded with treatment in an orderly manner. In less than half a month, the flu was brought under control and amp-up work began. She hadn't closed her eyes for several days. Finally, Vivian Foster couldn't hold on any longer. She found a stone to sit on, intending to close her eyes and rest. A figure sat down beside her. The familiar sound of breathing reached her ears. Without opening her eyes, she knew it was Lucas Thornton. Why did he have to come? This place was so dangerous. A single moment of carelessness could lead to death. That's what she thought, and that's what she asked. "Vivian, are you concerned about me?" The girl opened her eyes and looked at him, a flicker of sarcasm in her eyes. Her faint voice, muffled by the thick mask, sounded a bit indistinct. "I'm just concerned for an elder. That's all." With that, she didn't look at him again and got up to leave. At the end of the path, Jasper Sheridan stood outside the wall, waving at her. "Vivi," she smiled. "Just a little longer and we can meet." After the flu was completely resolved, the medical team and the security team burned all used medical supplies. Then, after undergoing rounds of disinfectant sprays and checks, they were allowed to leave one by one. But when it was Lucas Thornton's turn, the medical staff stopped him. "Sir, you may have to stay behind." Chapter 18. Vivian Foster, who had just come out, turned her head in shock to look at him. She then heard the medical staff continue. "Sir, your current symptoms strongly resemble the flu. You must be isolated for observation and treatment first." Lucas Thornton nodded, gave her a deep look, then turned and entered a room to the side. Her nails dug into her palms, her eyes filled with complex emotions. Jasper Sheridan walked over from the side. "Vivi," she sighed, her gaze fixed on the tightly closed door. Lucas Thornton finally experienced the full force of the flu. Even though he had suffered many injuries before, never had he felt as miserable, as if life were worse than death. High fever and vomiting became commonplace. In less than a week, he had lost a significant amount of weight. He lay dying on the hospital bed, an IV drip in one hand, the other tightly clutching a woman's bracelet. When Vivian Foster, dressed in a thick isolation suit, entered, this was the scene she saw. Her hand, hanging by her side, involuntarily clenched. When Director Finch asked who among them was willing to take care of Lucas Thornton, she was the first to step forward. Jasper Sheridan, beside her, was filled with incomprehension. After all Lucas Thornton had done to her, why would she still volunteer to take care of him? She wasn't sure either. But the moment she walked in, the answer quietly surfaced in her heart. Not because of romantic feelings, but out of a junior's concern for an elder. After all, he had taken care of her for so many years. Once, she too had a persistent high fever, and the man had painstakingly wiped her arms with medical alcohol over and over again. It took 3 whole days for her fever to break. And because he had cared for her for too long, he had suffered from a lack of energy and nearly got injured on the battlefield. Now, her volunteering to take care of him was merely to repay his kindness. In a haze, Lucas Thornton smelled a familiar scent of gardenia. It was the girl's favorite perfume. Was it her? But she had already drawn a clear line with him. How could she come to take care of him? The man groggily opened his eyes and saw the familiar eyes beneath the mask. "Vivian?" Vivian Foster's hand, holding the medicine bottle, paused. Without acknowledging him, she directly changed the IV bottle and then pushed the cart out of the room. He smiled bitterly and closed his eyes again. For the next few days, Vivian Foster remained silent when she came to change his medication. He wanted to chat with her but had no excuse. Half a month later, Lucas Thornton's flu finally subsided, and he was released from the isolation ward. After changing into casual clothes and being disinfected, she was about to leave. Vivian! The next moment, she was tightly embraced by the man. She instinctively tried to push him away, but the man's strength was too great. She couldn't break free. Lucas Thornton let go. He, however, acted as if he hadn't heard, his low voice sounding by her ear. "Why did you do this, Vivian?" Hadn't she said she wanted to draw a clear line with him? Why did she then disregard her own safety to come to the isolation ward to treat him? "Because you are my elder." A simple sentence, shattering all his illusions. Even Jasper Sheridan, who had come to pick her up, let out a scoff upon hearing it. He dejectedly loosened his arms, his eyes filled with pain as he looked at her, his voice broken. "But I don't want to be your elder. But you can only be my elder." The next instant, his face lost all color. His lips moved, but he didn't know what to say. The girl's words continued. She looked up, her gaze serious as she met the man's eyes, devoid of any trace of love. "Because you are my elder, and you once took care of me when I had a high fever, that's why I thought of taking care of you. It wasn't out of any other selfish intentions." She no longer looked at the expression on his face and walked towards the man standing by the car. "Why are you here?" "To take you back." The wheels kicked up a layer of dust, disappearing at the end of the road. Chapter 19, the two didn't return to the base, but found a random river to stop by, sitting shoulder to shoulder on the hood of the car. The winding river met the distant sunset, the afterglow illuminating the entire grassland. She looked at the profile of the man beside her, thinking that some things needed to be said clearly. "Jasper Sheridan?" The girl's voice sounded by his ear. He turned his gaze, and their eyes met mid-air. "The question you asked me when you left last time, I have an answer now." Hearing this, the man's hand resting on the car instantly clenched into a fist, his breath involuntarily tightening. He heard her say, word by word, yet with extreme seriousness, "Jasper Sheridan, I love you." Those few short words made him ecstatic. He pulled the girl beside him into his arms, his body trembling uncontrollably from excessive excitement. The next second, he abruptly released her hand and jumped off the car. "Wait for me a moment." The man stumbled towards the distance, plucked a handful of wildflowers, and then bounded back towards her. A large bunch of daisies was thus presented before her eyes. She raised an eyebrow. "This is," he shyly scratched his head. "I heard them say that after getting together, one should proactively give flowers to the girl." Vivian Foster chuckled, took the daisies from his hand, and sniffed them gently. "Thank you, I like them very much." The crowd, watching the two return to the base hand in hand, tacitly began to cheer and walk towards them. Director Finch put down his work, looked at the flowers in the girl's hand, then at the blushing man beside her, and smiled benevolently. "Are you two together now?" She shyly nodded. Director Finch clapped his hands. "This is great news, congratulations to you both." The others also started teasing them, one after another. Late at night, the sleepy crowd dispersed. She was also escorted back to her room by Jasper Sheridan. At the door, the two of them held each other quietly. He couldn't help but sigh. "I feel like everything today was a dream." Vivian Foster lifted her head from his embrace, her eyes crinkling into a smile. She reached out and pinched his cheek. "Do you still feel like it's a dream now?" The man held her hand back, nuzzling it. "Not anymore." The two reluctantly said goodbye. Only after seeing the candle in her room extinguish did Jasper Sheridan turn to leave. He hadn't walked far when a figure suddenly appeared before him. Under the moonlight, Lucas Thornton's face was thus presented to his sight. "Let's talk." The two walked side by side towards the other end of the base. Only at the end of the road did Lucas Thornton stop and look at the man before him. Just as he was about to speak, Jasper Sheridan spoke first. "I know what you want, but I won't be like you, disregarding her because of too many reservations. Besides, did you really push her away because of your uncle-niece relationship and the huge age gap?" With that, he didn't wait for the other man's reply and turned to leave. Lucas Thornton didn't call him back, just smiled bitterly and covered his face. Indeed, these were not excuses for him not to be with Vivian Foster. His power was great enough. If he wanted, he could easily resolve all these reservations. What he truly feared was something else. In the morning, when the girl opened the door and saw the person before her, there was no surprise on her face. Last night, After she told everyone she was with Jasper Sheridan, she knew Lucas Thornton would eventually come looking for her. "Vivian, you can't be with him." Hearing this sentence, she really wanted to splash the water from her cup onto his face, but she held back. "Not with him, so with you? Lucas Thornton, if you're not fully awake, go back and get some more sleep." "No, it's not that. Your age difference is too great." This time, Vivian Foster couldn't help but roll her eyes. "He's not as old as you, is he? Do I need to remind you that you're a full 12 years older than me?" She looked at the man's tired face from lack of sleep and continued. "There's one thing I've never understood. What was the real reason you were unwilling to be with me back then? Was it the gossip? No, if he wanted, those rumors would never have started. Was it the age gap? There were many couples around with age differences. Was it the uncle-niece relationship? Firstly, they weren't blood-related. Secondly, her household registration wasn't with his. If they both wanted, she could have an independent household registration anytime or transfer it back to her parents' names. So she didn't understand at all. What was it that made him unwilling to be with her? Chapter 20, the man's hand, gripping the doorframe, tightened. Finally, he spoke. "Your age difference is too great. If he passes away before you, what will you do then?" As if hearing a joke, she laughed, her laughter growing louder and louder until tears streamed down her face. "Lucas Thornton, I'm an adult. I have the ability to support myself. I don't need my husband to worry about me like that in the future. Besides, there are children and the country to care for me. I am physically and mentally sound. I don't need to worry about how I'll take care of myself alone when I'm old." A hint of disappointment flickered in her eyes. She had overestimated him. He had made so many excuses to reject her. In the end, wasn't it because his love for her wasn't that clear? If he truly loved her, things like age difference and status wouldn't even be worth mentioning. But his own feelings for her were wavering. How ironic. "Lucas Thornton, I'm not you. I can't even be sure about my feelings. If I like someone, I will bravely pursue them. Those other things are trivial matters not worth mentioning." A voice came from behind. Jasper Sheridan walked around him and took the girl's hand. "Don't make so many ridiculous excuses for your own incompetence anymore." In the week before Lucas Thornton left, it happened to be the time of the African animal migration again. So, to bid them farewell, the aid teams specially requested the security team to go to the grasslands to witness this magnificent spectacle. The same sunset, the same campfire, but the person beside her had changed. The man shared a blanket with her, the two of them huddling close for warmth. The camp pot before them bubbled with the aroma of meat. She took a deep breath, and her stomach rumbled involuntarily. Jasper Sheridan chuckled softly, stirring the meat broth with a wooden spoon he had just carved. "Wait a moment, it'll be ready soon." By another campfire, Lucas Thornton had just ladled meat broth into a bowl when a wolf howl came from a distance. "On guard," he shouted immediately, and instantly everyone stood up, holding torches. In the distance, a group of green lights gradually approached them. Finally, hundreds of wolves surrounded them, their prey, within their attack range. A chill ran down Vivian Foster's spine, and she involuntarily tightened her grip on the sleeve of the man beside her. No one dared to make the first move. Suddenly, with a howl from the Wolf King, the pack attacked them from all directions. Jasper Sheridan protected her behind him while thrusting a torch at a wolf. The fire licked at its fur, and soon flames engulfed the wolf's entire body, causing it to roll on the ground, howling in pain. But this did not deter the wolves' will to attack. Wolf after wolf pounced on them. On the other side, Lucas Thornton kicked away a wolf while waving the torch in his hand. He ordered the people behind him, "Don't get entangled in fighting, get in the vehicles and leave here immediately." Perhaps due to excessive panic, someone accidentally fell to the ground while retreating. The wolf pack immediately surrounded that person. Careful Vivian Foster instinctively moved to save the person, but her exposed back also became a target for the wolves. Vivian, she didn't have time to react, watching helplessly as two wolves pounced towards her. The next instant, two figures lunged towards her. Blood dyed her entire vision, red countless arrows rained down from mid-air like water, and the wolves fell one after another. It turned out that nearby residents who were hunting at night saw their plight and rushed to their rescue. Under the shower of arrows, the remaining wolves howled and fled in disarray. Only then did she react, looking at the two bloody figures before her, and instinctively lunged towards one of them. Jasper, on the other side, Lucas Thornton, who had lost too much blood, saw this scene and smiled bitterly. He inexplicably recalled a time long ago. When she and Willow Myers were injured at the same time, he had abandoned her and rushed to the other person. Finally, he closed his eyes in pain. This journey ended prematurely due to the wolf attack. In the hospital, the lights were brightly lit. She sat on a bench, staring blankly at the red light above the operating room. Her mind was filled with the image of Jasper Sheridan lunging towards her. Soon, the operating room door was pushed open, and Jasper Sheridan was wheeled out. Only after the doctor told her the man was not in critical danger did she breathe a sigh of relief. She slumped powerlessly to the floor. Chapter 21, in the hospital room, she quietly looked at the person on the bed, raised her hand, and gently caressed his face. "Jasper Sheridan, you have to wake up soon." Knock, knock. The hospital room door was knocked. She quickly got up and walked over. As soon as she opened the door, a pale-faced Lucas Thornton stood before her. Remembering that he had also saved her that day, a thank you escaped her throat. He shook his head. What was there to thank him for? That day, he had personally seen Jasper Sheridan save her before he did, and Jasper's injuries were much more severe than his own. He reined in his thoughts and looked at the person before him. "Vivian, if I had saved you before him back then, would we?" "No, in my heart you can only ever be my elder." The girl's eyes were too clear. He didn't continue asking. To say more would be to invite rebuff. He merely told her to rest well, then stumbled away. Soon, it was the day Lucas Thornton was to leave. The same airport, the same plane, the same her seeing someone off. Only the person being seen off was now her Uncle Lucas. The man looked at the girl before him, his heart full of words he wanted to say. But now, he no longer had the right to say them. In the end, all those words turned into two short ones. "Take care." After more than 20 hours of flying, Lucas Thornton, whose injuries hadn't fully healed, became increasingly weak. As soon as he got off the plane, he couldn't hold on any longer. He vomited a mouthful of blood and fainted. "Sir," when he woke up in the hospital again, his friend looked at him, his face full of worry and anger. "You're really risking your life?" He had suffered many injuries before going abroad, and then he had endured so much in Africa. "You really? Even an iron constitution can't withstand such abuse. If this goes on, you won't have many years left to live." His friend looked at the list of abnormal indicators on the report, his anger growing. And Vivian Foster, far away in Africa, knew nothing of this. She watched the person slowly open his eyes, unable to hold back her emotions any longer. She covered her mouth and sobbed. The man on the hospital bed smiled, laboriously raised his hand to wipe away her tears, his voice hoarse. "What are you crying for? Am I not fine?" She shook her head. "What fine? A wound so deep you could see white bone." If it were her, she would have collapsed long ago. She wanted to speak but didn't know what to say. For the next half-month, he lay in the hospital bed. Even his birthday was spent in the hospital bed. For this, she specially made him a bowl of longevity noodles. On the small table, a steaming bowl of noodles was topped with a poached egg, a few pieces of beef, and some green bok choy. A few drops of sesame oil were drizzled on top. The aroma filled the entire room. "Smells so good." He took a deep breath, picked up his fork, and started slurping. "Careful, it's hot." Vivian Foster ladled a bowl of beef bone broth from the wooden bucket and set it aside to cool, watching him slurp the noodles heartily. Her heart was filled with complex emotions. In the past, she hadn't wanted to return to the country, partly because she couldn't bear to leave her career, and partly because there was no one she missed back home. Now, someone had given up everything in the country to pursue her, loved her wholeheartedly, and risked his life to save her. She was not a selfish person, nor did she want him to spend the rest of his life in Africa. With his abilities, he should return to the country and achieve great things, not be trapped here, working without a sense of self for her sake for the rest of his life. After he finished the last sip of bone broth, she handed him a napkin to wipe his mouth. Then she put the bowl and fork back in the box. Finally, she mustered her courage and said, "Jasper Sheridan, why don't we go back to the country?" The man's action of wiping his mouth paused. He looked at her in surprise, his eyes full of incomprehension. All of a sudden, why did she want to go back to the country? After hearing her explanation, he fell into deep thought. "Vivi, you don't have to sacrifice your career for me. Besides, it doesn't matter where I am." She still insisted on returning to the country. On the day they left, everyone was reluctant to see them go. Even Director Finch's eyes reddened as he admonished them. "Be safe. Take care when you get back." Hand in hand, the two of them said goodbye to everyone one by one before boarding the plane. Chapter 22, The Capital. After 4 years, looking at these familiar yet strange streets, her heart was filled with emotion. Perhaps knowing she would be back soon, Lucas Thornton had instructed Mrs. Gable early on to prepare a sumptuous table of dishes according to her taste. At the dining table, the two of them ate in silence. Only after she was full and put down her fork did the man pick up a thick stack of documents from the side and hand them to her. She took them, not understanding, but when she saw the household registration transfer documents, she abruptly looked up. He coughed into his fist a few times before saying, "According to relevant regulations, I can only support you until you are 18. It was just that he couldn't bear to part with her back then, so he had suppressed the urging documents from above and kept her for so many more years. Besides, she was the orphan of a martyr. She should inherit her father's surname. If he kept her any longer, she would have to change her surname to his. And she also had a partner now. She no longer needed him to protect her. Also, that report, he wasn't sure how much longer he could hold on. With that, he didn't look at her reaction again and went upstairs, leaving her alone at the dining table, staring blankly at the documents in her hand. Mrs. Gable, standing by, couldn't hold back any longer and stepped forward. "Miss Vivian, please go and try to persuade Mr. Thornton." After he came out of the hospital, his friend had advised him to rest more and not to stop taking the prescribed herbal remedies. But ever since he returned from the hospital, he had thrown his friend's advice to the wind. Vivian Foster's eyes flickered with a complex emotion. He looked so much like she had in the past. No explanations, no words, silently licking wounds in a corner. Vainly hoping this would make the other person feel sorry. But they were no longer the same people they once were. No matter what he did, she didn't show a trace of pity. But he was, after all, her elder. She should still try to persuade him. Thinking this, she placed the documents on the table. She went upstairs and knocked on his room door. "Uncle Lucas, open the door, let's talk." It was unknown what the two of them talked about that night, only that since then, Lucas Thornton seemed like a changed person. He rested obediently, took his medicine on time, and his health visibly improved. Looking at the new house before her, a smile flickered in Vivian Foster's eyes. Her house was also in the military compound, but it was at the southern end, while Lucas's house was at the northern end. Unless they deliberately passed by, they rarely met. On the day she officially moved in, Jasper Sheridan also came specially to help her move new furniture. He even gifted her a piano. She caressed the piano lovingly, her eyes full of affection. Seeing she was also satisfied, he suggested they play a piece together. Under the afternoon sun, the two sat shoulder to shoulder, and melodious piano music drifted from the window, reaching Lucas Thornton's ears. Looking at such a well-matched couple, he struggled to suppress the bitterness in his heart. Only after the two inside had finished playing a piece did he approach and knock on the door. "Uncle Lucas, when did you arrive?" She took the gardenias from his hand while inviting him into the house to sit. "Just arrived." He sat down on the sofa, looking around the new house. He had always disliked bright colors, so apart from Vivian Foster's room, the rest of his house was decorated in very muted tones. Her own house, however, was brightly colored, which couldn't help but lift one's spirits. A gentle breeze blew through the doorway and the wind chimes tinkled. "Uncle Lucas, have some tea." The girl placed the teacup in front of him on the table, then sat opposite him with Jasper Sheridan. He picked up the teacup, blew on it, and took a sip. Only then did he look at the two people before him. "Have you set a date to meet the parents?" They had confirmed their relationship in Africa, but due to various reasons, the meeting with the parents had been postponed time and again. Only now did the two of them have time. They looked at each other and smiled. Next Monday at the Grand Plaza Hotel. Chapter 23, in a private room at the Grand Plaza Hotel. The two families met for the first time. Because Vivian Foster's parents had passed away early, her family representative was Lucas Thornton, who had raised her since she was a child. This was not the first time he had experienced meeting the parents. Last time, as a future son-in-law, he had gone with Willow Myers to meet her parents. Because he didn't like Willow Myers at the time, he had been absent-minded throughout the whole process. And because of Vivian Foster, he had even left midway. Now, however, he was acting as a proxy parent, discussing her marriage. Before coming, Jasper's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Sheridan, were very curious about Vivian Foster and also held a hint of dissatisfaction. Curious about what kind of person could make their son abandon everything in the country and chase her to Africa. Dissatisfied that their son had stayed in Africa for over 2 years because of her. But when they actually met her, that bit of dissatisfaction vanished. Mrs. Catherine Sheridan even gave her an ancestral jade bracelet. She shyly tried to refuse, but Jasper Sheridan accepted it on her behalf. "Thank you, Mom." The lustrous jade bracelet made her skin appear even fairer. Amidst the clinking of glasses and conversation, the two families quickly decided on their wedding timeline. Engagement next month on the 15th. Marriage in early spring next year. Compared to the complex and tedious process of a wedding, an engagement only required inviting relatives and friends from both sides for a meal. Because she liked to be personally involved in everything, even the invitations were handwritten by her and Jasper Sheridan with fountain pens. Since meeting the parents, Jasper Sheridan had moved into her house. At this moment, the two of them were diligently transcribing the invitation content under the lamplight. Halfway through, he massaged her sore shoulders. Remembering the scene in the private room that day, his curiosity grew. Although he had known for a long time that Vivian Foster had given up on Lucas Thornton and that everything that needed to be said had been said. She had even repeatedly emphasized that she only saw him as an uncle, an ordinary elder. But ultimately, men understand men. He wouldn't misread the love for her in the other man's eyes. It was just that at the banquet, Lucas Thornton's eyes only held a trace of lingering attachment. That day, after she returned from dinner at Lucas's house, she had an extra household registration transfer document in her hand. What exactly had the two of them talked about that day? Vivian Foster carefully wrote down the last word before slowly speaking. What could be said? He was so dejected and unwilling to take medicine, wasn't it because of her? But even if he really died, what else could it achieve besides making her sad and guilty? If his goal was to make her feel guilty for the rest of her life, then he had achieved it. But they would also turn from uncle and niece into enemies. After all, if he died, she, as the main culprit, would definitely be reviled. Only then did he finally calm down. Hearing her words, Jasper Sheridan sighed endlessly. In the end, he couldn't say anything. On the day of the engagement, the two of them, dressed in formal attire, stood on the stage toasting the guests. At the bride's side of the banquet, Lucas Thornton forcibly suppressed the bitterness in his eyes. He had never dreamed that the little girl he had raised bit by bit would become someone else's fiancée. Watching her laugh charmingly, coquettishly beside another man. Wave after wave of pain washed over his heart. This was just the engagement. He couldn't imagine how much pain he would be in when she got married. The man drank cup after cup of alcohol, vainly trying to get drunk. After the engagement, the two of them also moved into the same room. She, who had never shared a bed with anyone else, felt somewhat unaccustomed. After showering, Vivian Foster, dressed in pajamas, sat awkwardly on the sofa. Jasper Sheridan stroked her head. "Go to sleep. I won't touch you. A night of good sleep." She rubbed her eyes as she came down the stairs. She immediately saw the man bustling about in the kitchen. That was the scene she had once longed to see the most, and now it appeared right before her eyes. For a moment, she felt it was all so unreal. A pair of small hands wrapped around his waist from behind, hugging him tightly. Jasper Sheridan smiled gently. Just as he was about to speak, an urgent phone call rang in the living room. After hearing the content of the call, both their faces instantly darkened. Lucas Thornton had fallen ill again. Outside the operating room, the doctor explained the cause of Lucas Thornton's illness to them. One was his old injuries. The other was that he had been too busy recently. As they were talking, the operating room door opened again. The man, his eyes tightly closed, was wheeled out. Looking at his pale face, her heart inexplicably ached. In the quiet hospital room, Vivian Foster sat by his bed, quietly looking at the person before her. Complex thoughts surged into her mind again. How should she see him? She was definitely grateful to him. Without him, she really wouldn't have such a good present. She had also hated him for pushing her away, for hurting her time and time again. When she first arrived in Africa, she couldn't sleep night after night. He was all she saw when she closed her eyes. Now she truly only had feelings for him as an elder. Vivian Foster held his hand and murmured, "Lucas Thornton, wake up quickly. I'm still waiting for you to walk me down the aisle." Perhaps hearing her call, a week later, he opened his eyes again. Only then did the two of them feel relieved and began to prepare for the wedding wholeheartedly. As for where she would depart from for the wedding, both sides discussed it and finally decided that she would marry from Lucas Thornton's home. After 5 years, she returned to her room again. Because of Lucas Thornton's instructions, the entire room had been restored by Mrs. Gable to its original appearance, as if she had never left. Before going to bed, Lucas Thornton knocked on her room door. Looking at the box he handed over, she widened her eyes in surprise. It contained her parents' heirlooms, which she had pawned years ago to repay him. After all this time, they had returned to her hands. On the wedding day, she walked arm in arm with Lucas Thornton, step by step, towards her groom. Amidst the blessings of the crowd, the newlyweds shared a sweet kiss. In a corner, Lucas Thornton wiped away the tears from the corners of his eyes, a most sincere smile on his face. "Vivian, happy wedding. May you be happy for the rest of your life." The end.